All right. Well, welcome everybody to today's Lunch and Learn. My name is Ben Lefort, Senior Policy Analyst with OFA. Today I'll be reviewing the results of OFA's Farm Business Confidence Survey. And just a reminder that if you have any questions, please just type them into the chat of the Zoom here. And we will answer the questions at the end of the presentation in the order in which they presented. So you don't have to wait till the end. You can just type it in whenever the question pops into your head. All right, and I'm just going to share my screen and we will get started. All right, so this was OFA's, second Farm Business Confidence Survey that we've ran. We ran the survey online, available to all OFA members from December 2nd to December 20th of 2024, so right before the holidays. And we were very happy that we had nearly 1,100 respondents to the survey. 1,061 members filled out the survey. That's up from 840 on our first year running the survey. So we were very happy with how many people engaged with the survey, and we got some really great results. A few slides here just to show that we have a very good cross-section of the membership, both geographically and by commodity. So we can see here we have members responding basically from every county and district and region of the province. We have largely almost all commodities are represented in the respondents, with the majority of the respondents producing soybeans, corn, and wheat. We have a well represented percentage of folks who responded by different size of the farm, by income range. So we have very large farms and very small farms, and everyone in between, all giving their voice to this survey, which is important to us, that this results be representative of the membership at large. This year we added a new question to the survey that asked on business structure, how each respondent's farm business was structured. Was it a sole proprietorship? Was it a incorporated farm business or a partnership? The results we found were pretty well in line with the stats we see from Statistics Canada, where about a third of farm businesses are incorporated. We had 31% of our respondents as incorporated farm businesses. We also added a few more questions this year to get at the results for folks at different stage in their career in farming. So we asked, would you consider yourself an established farmer, a retiring farmer, or a newer farmer? And 71% consider themselves an established farmer. 18% is retiring. We had 3% as other, and looking through the results, those were almost all folks saying that they were retired and not retiring. So we'll amend that question next year to retired or retiring farmers. We also asked, we wanted to know how different age groups within the farming community answered the question. So we asked each of the questions. So we asked, our age, are you 60 and above, 35 to 59, or under 35? And 2/3 of the respondents were 60 and above, and only 4% of those who responded were under 35. So this is definitely an issue we'll look for when we do our third version of the survey, is how to engage more of our young members to be able to fill out the survey and give their voice to the issues of the day. We asked a number of questions about on-farm investment from 2024, asking farmers how they invested in their business, what investments they were making, which ones they were not. And since this was the second year we ran the survey, we're now able to see how changes in investment year over year took place. So the next few slides are a number of slides touching on specific investments. We asked first some kind of more general questions about the change in your business in the last year. So we asked, over the last year, has your business expanded, stayed the same, or downsized? And 74% of the respondents said their business roughly stayed the same. It didn't expand, it didn't downsize, it basically just stayed where the status quo for 2024. And that's an increase of compared to the same question we asked the year before in 2023. More folks were expanding and more folks were downsizing in the year before. So 2024 was really kind of I think described as a kind of status quo year, and that'll be reflected in a number of the following questions around expansion and investment in 2024. So we asked if you bought or rented additional acres of land in 2024. So getting into, did you expand your business? 23% said that they did buy or rent additional land in 2024, which is a positive sign. That is up slightly from the same time in 2023. Of those who are in livestock, we asked, did you expand the size of your herd or your flock in 2024? Now we get into some of the results where there's looks like less expansion happening, and so 15% of the respondents for which that was a relevant question said that they did, compared to a quarter last year, so a significant reduction. We asked greenhouse producers, did you expand or add any total square footage to your business in 2024? 3% said that they did, slightly up from last year. Getting into some specific investments, did you construct new farm structures, barns, storage facilities, etc., onto your farm in 2024? 11% said that they did in 2024 compared to 13% the year before. We asked, did you purchase any new or used machinery? So did you add any new machinery? And 29% said they bought new, 53% said that they bought used machinery, and 18% said that they bought both, a combination of used and new, which is very roughly almost identically in line with what we saw the year before. So that'll be an interesting one to track over the years. If this remains a very stable response, that this might tell us this is just year over year, the kind of mix of new and used machinery that farmers are adding to their business. Did you invest in new farming technology? So did you get into any precision agriculture, add any kind of automation into the business in 2024? 12% said that they did, compared to 16% the year before, so a noticeable drop in investment in that regard. We asked, did you invest in any direct-to-consumer marketing initiatives? So did you sell directly to consumers? Did you have through a website, on social media? Did you have a on-farm store where you sell directly to consumers? 11% said that they did in 2024 compared to 13% in 2023. We asked, did you invest in any on-farm retail and or on-farm processing facilities? So more now, less of did you engage in these activities, and more did you invest to build any of these new facilities for retail or processing on your farm property in 2024? And only 4% said that they did, compared to 6% last year. We asked, did you make any investments to increase the energy efficiency of your business in 2024? Very similar results, a slight reduction of 15% saying they made those investments this year. Did you diversify the range of your agricultural commodities you produce in 2024? So again, a very stable result to what we saw in 2023, but just a very slight change, almost identical. We asked for those that did diversify, added new commodities, which commodities did you start producing in 2024? Wheat, soybeans, and field vegetables were the top three commodities new commodities that respondents started producing in 2024. Getting into farm business confidence now, confidence both in the industry and confidence in farmers' confidence in their own business heading into 2025. And what we see now is a market drop in confidence in the sector for 2025. We asked members, how confident are you in the outlook for the Ontario farm sector in 2025? So the orange results, the orange bar here shows a 2025. How confident are you for 2025? And the blue bar here is how confident were you when we asked this question last year for 2024? And as we can see, there in 2024, folks were much more confident. In 2024, 20% of respondents said that they were either very or extremely confident in the sector for 2024, and that is hovering around 12% for 2025. And now, pardon me, over 41% are not so confident or not at all confident in the industry outlook for 2025. Now, obviously, we ran this survey in the first 3 weeks of December, a couple of weeks after the announced tariff threats, the first tariff threat announcement. Certainly weighs heavily over confidence in the sector for this year. Hard to imagine folks being overly more optimistic today than this time last year, given all of the uncertainty about what 2025 trade policy will hold and the impacts of that. We asked farmers how confident are they in their own business in 2025. So not just the sector itself, but how confident are you for your farm heading into 2025? And here we see kind of a little bit of resilience and a little bit of reduction in confidence. So overall, farmers are much more confident in their own business for 2025 than they are of the industry itself. More farmers were responding that they were very or extremely confident in their own business compared to the industry. But when we their confidence in their own business has dropped from 2024. So we asked this question last year. A third of respondents said they were either very or extremely confident in their own business heading into 2024. And now that's hovering around 24% are at least very confident. And the significant increase in those saying that they are not so confident or not at all confident heading into this year compared to last year. Again, so that's kind of a trending theme here. And this is just, again, highlighting that farmers are more confident in their own business. So this is just the results of the last two questions kind of put side by side. The blue bar being confidence in your own business and the orange bar being confident in the industry. So we can see here there is a significant increase in confidence in their own business compared to the industry at large. So farmers can understand that it's going to be a difficult, likely a difficult, uncertain year, but remain fairly optimistic in their ability to weather a choppy 2025. We have then asked farmers about how they expected their business to grow over 2025. And we asked the same question last year, and then we asked how did it grow in 2024. So we're able to compare for 2024 how farmers thought their business would grow or change and how it actually did. So what we see is a lot more. So the orange bar here is the actual change of the business and growth, or so expansion or downsize, and the blue bar is what they thought was going to happen at the beginning of the year in 2024. So a lot more farmers thought that they would either downsize or expand, and in reality, a lot more of them stayed the same and didn't expand and didn't downsize than they thought they would. So some folks might have been more optimistic and some were more pessimistic. And in the end, it was less change in the size of farm operations in 2024 than farmers thought that there would be. And we asked the same question again. We'll compare how this pans out at the end of the year when we run the survey for a third time. We asked farmers to describe how they believe their business will change in 2025. And the results here match the reality that we saw before. So in 2024, 74% actually responded that they actually stayed the same. And for 2025, 71% anticipate they'll stay roughly the same, with 14% expecting their business to expand and 12% expecting it to downsize in 2025, with 3% expecting it diversification to be their focus. So now we get into some of the policy priorities and the issues that farmers are most worried about. So we asked respondents to tell us to select all the policy priorities that would be helpful for their farm business or their commodity sector in 2025. So this is important for us because this lets OFA know what our members want us working on, what policy items are most pressing for members. And what we find here is the top three issues are reducing farm taxes, which is number one by a significant margin, supporting farmers with energy costs, and protecting the right of property access, with encouraging Ontarians to buy local as the number four issue. And we look at how those priorities have changed or not compared to the year before when we asked the same question. We see an identical response rate on reducing farm taxes as the number one issue, with in each year 71% of respondents selecting this as one of their policy priorities. And supporting farmers with energy costs is once again the number two issue. The only change is, from the top three at least, is that protecting the right of property access is number three, where last year encouraging Ontarians to buy local food was number three. But it's important to note that we actually added options this year. We'll continue to add policy priority options every year we do this. So protecting the right of property access was not an option to select in 2024. It was in this year's survey, so it may well have been the third issue last year as well if it were an option. But it is now the third policy priority identified by the membership. We did a little an additional question because we had a feeling that taxation would be the number one issue. A follow-up question asking them which type of tax was most impactful to your business, and 35% of respondents indicated property tax, 25% said carbon tax, and then 20% income tax and capital gains and HST after that. So not terribly surprising to me as the person who's been covering property tax that that is the number one tax that members are concerned about. We all know farm property taxes have been increasing at a high rate for a long time now, and farming is a land-based business, so it's not too much of a surprise for me to see that property tax tops the list there. Just a little bit now, we kind of shifted focus from policy priority to asking about what issues are most likely to pose the biggest challenge to your business in 2025. And for the second year in a row, rising input costs was the number one issue farmers are concerned about that it would impact their business negatively. This year, the top five are rising input costs, the cost of insurance, which has jumped up quite a bit from the year before, tax burdens, municipal policies and bylaws, and number five, interest rates and debt servicing. So that's a very similar top five to what we saw in 2024, just with some moving around. So interest rates and debt servicing dropped a few places last year. That was the number two issue. And when we ran the survey in December of 2023, interest rates were much higher than they are today. So as rates have come down, I'm not too surprised to see that slide down a few issues here, or a few slots. And basically it swapped places with the cost of insurance, which was the fifth challenge last year and is now the number two overall issue that farmers have told us that they are worried about for their business this year. So that's a rising concern, and so that gives us some good information now for OFA to start investigating that further and digging into what are the main issues and cause of cost of premiums and insurability of farm properties, and what are some ways we can either work to get information out to both the insurance sector and out to our membership, and is there policy areas where might be able to help with some of these issues. So this is an issue we'll be definitely investigating more throughout the year, given it's risen now to the number two biggest challenge identified by members. So I now have a little bit of, we're able to break down some of this analysis too to show what is confidence and what are the policy concerns and issues by region of the province, by farm experience, by business structure to kind of see how different segments of our membership, what they're worried about. And is there a big difference from, say, young farmers to retiring farmers of what the policy priorities are? Is there different policy priorities in the east, west, and north, and what have you? So I'll move a little bit more quickly through some of this because it is kind of breaking down similar information that we've seen just by region and by different groups of the membership. And I'll add that anyone who's interested in a discussion of a detailed breakdown of any of these segments of the respondents to get in touch with me at any point. I'd be happy to break down the data in detail. So starting with confidence by region of the province, for the second year in a row, what we see is Northern Ontario farmers are the most confident in the sector and in their business. So when we asked the question about confidence in the sector, 30% of Northern Ontario farmers were either extremely or very confident in the sector this year, and that was by far the highest amount to respond that way. Similarly, for confidence in their own farm business, northern farmers again were the most optimistic, 37% nearly of them saying they were either very or extremely confident in their farm business in 2025. When looking at the policy priorities by region, very similar. Farm taxes, reducing farm taxes, number one across the board, no matter where you are in the province. The only real difference here is in Northern Ontario, compensation for wildlife damage to crops was the number 2 issue, policy priority identified. And that is actually similar to last year. Last year was also the number 2 issue in Northern Ontario. And in fact, the gap between number 1 and number 2 has closed significantly in Northern Ontario. So last year, reducing farm taxes was still number 1 in both years, but this year there's only a 3% gap between number 1 and number 2 for northern farmers, and it was much larger the year before. So there's an increasing concern for the issue of wildlife damage to crops throughout all of Ontario, but particularly Northern Ontario. And we've been many discussions, and we know what is driving this, and there's a lot of issues with issues of sandhill crane and other migratory birds causing damage to northern crops. But this will definitely remain a top policy priority, and it's something OFA has done research on, we've written letters on. We'll continue to advocate for that issue of compensation for wildlife damage to crops. Moving into issues, again, issues of concern to the business, nothing really jumping out here. All regions of the province had the same number 1 and number 2 issues, which was rising input costs and cost of insurance. Number 3, there was some variation, with northern farmers identifying transportation costs as the third concern. Eastern Ontario's identifying municipal policies and bylaws, and Southwest Ontario identifying tax burden as the number 3 concern to their business for this year. But on the top 2 issues, very consistent. And we see similar results here when we break it down by business structure. So incorporated farmers were the most confident in the industry, while farmers in a partnership were the most confident in their own business, but not by as much of a wide margin. When we look at the policy priorities by different farms based on their business structure, we see, again, a very similar overall issue. Almost everyone identifying the top 3 policy priorities the same way: taxes, energy costs, and protecting the right of property access. That was 1, 2, 3 across the board. It doesn't matter how the business was structured. They responded the same. And on issues that could impact the business, very similar responses again. The top 2 issues are the same across the board, with only slight variation of the third issue. Few more slides here, just looking at farmer age and industry experience and how that affected how they answered the survey. So we asked, when we asked, confidence in the sector, we essentially see that the younger the farmer was, the more confident they were in the sector in 2025. with farmers under 35 having the most confidence, 35 to 59, the second most, and the age of 60 plus farmers being the least confident in the industry in 2025. We see a much more pronounced version of that same trend when we ask about confidence in their own business. So 41% of under 35 farmers were either very or extremely confident in their own business for this year, and that was by far the highest response rate for that question. And farmers aged 60 plus were the least confident and most likely to say that they are not at all confident for their business in 2025. When looking at policy priorities by age, again, tax is the same one, no matter what age you are. That remains the number one policy priority for Ontario farmers. Similarly, the number two issue being energy costs. And really not much variation in the number three issue as well, with encouraging Ontarians to buy local and protecting the right of property access coming through as the number three of amongst the different age groups. Again, not much variation as well in the issues of concern, with younger farmers being more concerned about interest rates and debt servicing costs, unsurprisingly, given that they are most likely to be largely in debt to get into the farming industry and have established the business, as well as older farmers who have essentially been in the industry longer. So not too big a surprise to that it's the number two concern for our youngest farmers in the membership. So some key takeaways from us. So I would say 2024, we see a decline in farm investment with 8 out of the 10. So we asked 10 questions about investments being made in 2024. And in 8 of those 10 questions, there were fewer respondents making those investments compared to the year before that. So a market drop in investment and a market drop in confidence. Farmers are less confident about the state of the industry than they were a year ago. Only 12% saying they were either very or extremely confident in the Ontario farm industry outlook for 2025. And that was 18% of respondents a year ago. The bright spot is that farmers are more confident in their ability to manage the difficult climate, with more respondents saying that they're confident in their own business than the industry as a whole. However, when we dig into those numbers, we see that there is a drop in confidence in their own business as well, with 26% saying that they were either very or extremely confident in their own business this year, compared to 30% the year before. And the final issue, takeaway for OFA, things that we'll ponder on these results throughout the year. Very clear top 3 issues, really top 4 issues, with tax and energy costs being the number 1 and 2 issues across the board. Whether you're in Eastern or Northern Ontario, young or retiring farmer, incorporated or sole proprietorship, every way we could break the data down, identify those as the top 2 issues. Policy issues. And property tax specifically will continue to be an issue we monitor. We'll eagerly await to see if and when we get impact assessments again, and that will spur a lot of action on that file. That's been a bit dormant, as we haven't had new impact assessments in 5 years. We're working with 9-year-old assessment data. And in Northern Ontario as well, we were able to pull out that trend again of the increasing urgency to see some kind of compensation for crop damage from wildlife. And the top 3 issues of concern in 2025 remain the same as rising input costs, the cost of insurance, and tax burden. So a lot for us at OFA to digest. A lot of this is stuff that we did know, but it verifies it again for us and quantifies it. So again, if anyone has any questions either now or later on about specifics within the data, I'd be very happy to field any of those questions.
I don't
Okay, so I
see
don't
anything in the
see
chat.
any questions in the chat. I'll give another moment for that. And if not, I'll put my contact info into the chat, and anyone who would like additional details on the data can reach out to me at any point, but we'll give it another.
Can a person ask a question without going through the chat?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we're already chatting, so go for it.
Okay. You keep on referring to property access. Is that referring to the provincial legislation that came in regarding security from trespass and the Food Safety Act of 2020 or 21 that people are still trying to get enforced?
So that refers to a few issues. It's kind of a broader issue. I spoke with my colleague Duncan, who covers this issue, about that. And he told me that really is covering, so the protecting the right of property access comes up in three broad ways. Railway crossings, where the rail crossing closures can make accessing farmland difficult or even impossible. Road allowances on who owns, who maintains, and who's allowed to make use of them, and easements for accessing enclave lots that don't have a road frontage. So that was how that question was presented. Those are the large issues, or the kind of three broad pillars that fell under.
Okay, I have one more question, and it's on property tax. Back in January of 2016, which was the last year that assessments were done, MPAC came out with a new formula for analyzing and assessing farm properties, which basically allowed for depreciation of both the farm residents, farm buildings, and that all land values were set according to OMAFRA's 6 land categories that they establish a value for. MPAC has a great deal of difficulty understanding that the farm residents and other farm buildings need to have depreciation applied, which I understand has now been set at 5% per year depreciation by OMAFRA. Could you give any guidance on that, please?
Sure. So it's actually a little different than that. So on the 6 land use classes, which MPAC uses in part to come up with valuations for farmland itself, they actually have their own 6-grade system of classes 1 to 6 land that is different than the other land use classifications of land. And it tries to measure the productivity of the land. So 1 being kind of the most productive and 6 being the least productive land. So they do have their own valuation method for coming up with that. I can share with anyone who's interested, MPAC does publish online now for the public consumption how they come up with farm assessments. They have their farm methodology PDF, which is available. You can email me directly. My email's in the chat, or if you Google, MPAC farm assessment methodology, that will pop up as well. And yeah, there is depreciation added and obsolescence added into the valuation of on-farm structures, potentially including on-farm residents. I don't believe it's set at 5%. I'd have to go back into the valuation guide and see exactly how they measure that depreciation. And it would not be a number coming from OMAFA. It would either be internally come up with by MPAC using some other precedents of how it's done elsewhere, or directed by Ministry of Finance. It's Finance who directs MPAC, not OMAFA. But yes, if you want to shoot me an email, I can get into any more specific questions you might have on that guide, and I can share you a version of that guide of how they come up with all their different types of farm assessment.
Well, in actual fact, I have the guide. You provided it to me in 2016. I fought through the assessment review board successfully and obtained a judgment with a depreciation and using the OMAFRA land classification 1 to 6 and what they assigned as values being applied. And it went so far as the assessment hearing officer pointed out that the actual assessment document doesn't require that the farm residence be classed as regular land. It falls under the same classification of what the majority of your farmland is.
Right.
And getting the township to implement and apply the decision of the ARB has been very difficult, to say the least. Yes, the depreciation is actually established by Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA, and then the OMAFRA people came out with a document about 3 years ago saying that it had increased to 5%, but at that point it was 2.5. So I guess my question is, any suggestions on how to get the township to follow the law?
Well, the township should not have to be compelled to follow the law. It sounds like you have a difficult situation with the township you're in right now. So I would recommend shoot me an email and we can set up a time to have a chat one-on-one. It feels like we'll have to have a much more in-depth discussion one-on-one about the specifics of what's happening at your township, but I'd be very happy to help work with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I see a question in the chat from Ezra asking, do you have this data broken down by specific regions that you can share? e.g. Huron County specifically. Yes, we'll have a mini version of this report for all of our counties. So Ezra, if you want to shoot me an email, I can respond with the Huron County results or any other county that you're interested in. If anything, similarly, anyone else on the call, if you're interested in county level responses at a specific county, just shoot me an email and I'll arrange to get that data to you. And thank you, Jason. I see Jason put a link to MPAC's Farm Property Assessment Guide into the chat there as well. And if you click on that link, you can go in and download their PDF. It's a 30-page document on their methodology guide for valuing farms in Ontario. Yeah. All right. Any other questions here? I don't see anything else in the chat at the moment. So if none, I would say thank you so much. Thanks, Joanne, for putting this together. Thanks, everyone, for attending today. Again, please feel free to reach out to me if there's anything that we talked about today that you want to talk about further or want additional detail. I'm always available for that. My email is in the chat. It's ben.lefort@ofa.on.ca. So thank you very much for everyone for attending today.